What's going on, everyone? My name is Chris Gomez, and in today's video we're going to be talking about time lapses. Now, we're not exactly going to be talking about how to shoot a time lapse. That might be for another date, should I feel so inclined. But today I actually wanted to compare the two devices that I have at my disposal in my kit. One being the Sony a7 III, which I'm filming on now, and the other being the iPhone 11. Basically, I started going down this rabbit trail of wanting to add more skills into my repertoire as a video editor, as a filmmaker, and as a creative. So I found a video. If you are curious as to how I shot the time lapse on my Sony a7 III, it's up here on one of these sides. I forget which side it's on. Check that out after this video. So in today's video, we're gonna look at 4 different points of comparison, see how they stack up, and possibly declare a winner based on those 4 points of comparison. First, let's go visit me in the past while I was shooting a time lapse for this particular video. Past me, take it away. I wanted to show you a quick look at my setup, so future Chris, when you do the sit down talking part, remember this needs to be after the intro. a7 III, 28-70, step-up rings, ND filter, got the Manfrotto, I think Sport compact tripod, I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, and then that is just for the Sony a7 III. But for the iPhone, it's using the smartphone clip that comes with the tripod, and we're rocking the Gorilla Pod. I think it's the 3K version. The first point of comparison, we're talking about setup and execution. As you can see, the Sony has a lot more moving parts and bells and whistles to add to it. You've got to have the ND filter if you're shooting in daylight. You've got to have the lens. You've got to have the body. You've got to have the tripod. As you saw with the iPhone, I'm set up for time lapses. I'm ready to go. And it's 3 clicks. It's the camera app, the swipe to get to time lapse, and then the record, and you're going. It's simple, it's straightforward, and we'll take a look at the resulting footage here, and we can see what I shot that day, and you can kind of make a decision for yourself on which footage you prefer more or less. So if we're gonna have some arbitrary point system, I'm gonna throw a point over to the iPhone 11. It's so easy, it's so quick, and the results are good. You get some decent results. Second point of performance is quality. How good is the footage that you get out of the two devices? What I wanted to look at was the 2 different types of resolution that you would get out of each device. If we look over here, this is the image sequence that I got for my Scripps timeline that I shot down in San Diego. Time lapse. I'm gonna put it in a timeline. You can see that the dimensions are 5823 by 3882. It's pretty big. That's high quality. And then if we look over here, so comparing the dimensions, it's 1920 by 1080. So standard HD. Still, it's good footage, but it's quite a bit higher resolution on the Sony a7 III per frame. I wanted to find out what the 5823 by 3882 equivalent when it comes to video resolution. So I used Google, as everybody else does. I searched 24 megapixels converted to video resolution, and this actually gave me a megapixel calculator. Here you can see I've input the dimensions of that image. What I want to know is I want to compare to video. How many pixels are in your image? And so it gives me 22.6 megapixels, which is what my image was for the first frame. And if you look down, it intersects with 8K equivalent. That is equivalent to 8K footage, the time lapse that I shot on my Sony a7 III. I might be wrong, but to me that says that I've got the equivalent pixels and resolution of 8K footage that I can now use to punch into the image and then pull back and widen out. You don't quite get that with an iPhone. You get standard HD. So unless you plan on exporting to 720p, which I don't think many people will, you're kind of just stuck with a static shot unless you have a slider or some other tools or devices. But with the Sony a7 III, you now have the ability to create more dynamic movement and make a more interesting time lapse other than just the movement which is happening inside your frame. So I'm going to give the quality check to the Sony a7 III because of that equivalent to 8K footage and your ability to create more dynamic movement across your frame and the higher resolution and the higher quality. So you can take a look at the Scripps footage and let me know what you think as far as quality and which you prefer. Point of comparison number 3 is actually going to be control. And this feeds slightly into quality and they kind of go back and forth. But I want to know how much control do I have when it comes to my settings and the type of footage I'm getting when looking at the Sony a7 III and the iPhone 11. So when it comes to the Sony a7 III, there is all sorts of control that you have over the image that you're taking with each shutter click. Things to consider are the lenses that you're going to be using, the ND filters that you're going to be using, the interval settings you're going to put, so that also includes how many shots you're going to take and across how long of an interval you're going to be taking them. And then another thing to consider is the exposure settings you have on your camera. You have full control over that, over your ISO, your shutter speed, why am I forgetting these, and your aperture. That will influence the type of image you're gonna get. If you want more motion blur in it, you can slow down that shutter and make it like about a 1/4, or you can speed it up if you want more of a jittery and choppy time lapse. And then we have the iPhone. Let me show you what control you have. You have no control. You see these, there's no settings, there's no customization that you have. That can be good and bad. That's great for ease of execution. That's not good if you want to try and control your image even more. The time lapses that I did get, they had that kind of jittery, scattery look, and that's good for some things, but after practicing with time lapses, I think I prefer the smoothness that a motion blur at a slower shutter speed will allow you to do. I'm giving a point to the Sony a7 III for the controllability that you have on the device. So the fourth point of comparison is going to be time. Time is invaluable, and once you spend it, you can't get it back. With the iPhone 11, I think I shot for about 5 minutes or so to get the clip at Scripps Pier. That yielded me 9 seconds of footage, which is great. That's actually a pretty good return on that investment. So that is opposite of the Sony a7 III, whereas I spent 4 times the amount for about the same footage. Yeah, so it got me about 10 seconds of footage after shooting for 20 some odd minutes, and that was 316 single frames. It's quite a long time for about the same amount of footage, but that goes back to the quality. The quality that I got out of it, I think, was worth the time spent. However, if I was on a run and gun shoot and I needed something fast, the iPhone is the way to go. So I'm gonna give a point to iPhone. iPhone 11 will get a point for the time spent and the return on investment there. So those are the 4 points of comparison that I wanted to go through to kind of like get an idea of the pros and cons between the iPhone 11 and shooting on a Sony a7 III. Now, you're probably gonna expect me to declare a winner. And I'm gonna tell you what I told my friend as I was teaching him to get into photography. It all just depends. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to this stuff. It all just depends on what you're doing. So if you want just a quick static shot and you need to get on to the next shot, then roll with the iPhone 11. I think that got a great quality image. It has that HDR function that also will play into time lapses, so you get a nice evenly exposed image every time. But if you have the time to invest, then I say roll with the Sony a7 III because you're gonna get more flexibility and more control in the resulting image. So now it's up to you. You decide. You've seen footage compared from the iPhone 11 to the Sony a7 III. Personally, I'm probably gonna go with the Sony a7 III. I'm gonna invest the extra time to get more flexibility and a higher quality resolution versus just kind of like taking what I get out of the iPhone 11. So let me know down below what you think, which footage you preferred. I'd like to know that as well. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and watch this video and join me on this creative journey as I explore new skills and kind of share the results with you guys here. So keep your eye out for a follow-up video to this one. This is going to be 5 tips that I learned while shooting time lapses. Hopefully you'll be able to check out that video once it drops. It will be shortly after this one, but that is also an incentive to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification down below to make sure you get notified when new videos post. And yeah, again, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you coming along this journey, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.